All right, everybody, we have a treat here today. My good friend Darryl Stinson, the TEDx goat himself, public speaking extraordinaire, and just an all-around awesome person. Darryl, how are we doing today, man?
Man, I'm awesome, bro. Living my best life. Just excited to get it in with you, bro.
I'm excited too. It's been a really long time since we've spoken, been following each other on Facebook for a long, long time, and you've had a lot going on in your life. It kind of seems, Darryl, from the outside looking in, you have a TEDx talk that has 2 million views. How did that impact your life?
Oh man, it forced me to become who God was calling me to be before I was ready to become it.
All right, you got to tell me more. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like I always knew, like, so many people, you should share your story, you should get out there and speak more. And I was doing it. I've been doing it since 2011. But I was playing safe. Like I wasn't trying to change the world. I was just making an impact with my story. I wasn't trying to speak on larger stages. I wasn't doing any of that. Like I was just like, speaking at churches, speaking in sports teams, like just, sharing my story. And like whoever asked me is what I was doing. And man, I did that TEDx talk because I won a speaking competition as part of like Pete Vargas's community. And the prize of that was the TEDx stage. And I didn't even know what TEDx was. But once I landed the opportunity, I was like, oh man, this is huge. And dude, I wanted to back out. Like, I was like, I don't want to do this. And I prayed about it. And then like, you know, God put it on my heart to share, the story and the message in the way that I did, and I delivered it. And man, like, I mean, global notoriety, inbox people coming to my website requesting me to speak. Like, what? Like, no, like me having to pitch them and like negotiate them being like, hey, we don't know if we can afford you. But like we'd love to have you at our conference. Like that started to happen, testimonials from all over the world. Like it just opened my mind like in so many ways. And it caused me to step into a level of consistency in my speaking. Um, Specifically around some of those stories I shared. Like that TEDx talk was the first time I shared some of my mental health battle and the ways that I did publicly. And so when people started to ask me to share more about that, like, man, every time I had to open up, I had to be vulnerable. I had to, communicate my heart, and the consistency of that and saying yes to bigger stages and stages that were, inviting me in to speak, helped me to become that man, that leader that, God was speaking to me about for years. But I was just like, quote unquote, doing God's work, playing it small.
So Darryl, what do you think it was? Because I mean, I'll be honest, my TED talk didn't really do much. I have a whole story around how I changed my TEDx talk 12 hours before I actually delivered it because a mentor of mine called me up and he was like, "No, you're not doing that. Change it now." And we changed. But
Mm,
anyways, there's so many TEDx talks out there. 99% of them probably don't even get over 1,000 views. Yours got
mhm.
2 million.
Yeah.
So, so I guess why do you feel like yours was such a big hit? And please brag on yourself, my brother, because you but what do you, but more importantly, Darryl, I guess what
Yeah.
struck me about it was how vulnerable you were throughout that story. So, what do you think made the difference and why it took off the way that it did? Or what was
Yeah.
some of the feedback that you got?
Yeah. The point I will brag about is it has 2 million views, but it would probably have 10 if it didn't get flagged. And like what happened is when it hit 2 million views, for whatever reason, YouTube was like noticing it now because it was like a 2 million view video. And then they were like, oh, this has a trigger for suicide on it, even though you see thousands of comments saying like, no, this is actually helping me to not go that route.
Wow.
So they put this thing, you got to click like 2 times before you can watch the video. So I went from getting 10,000 views a day to like less than 10 a day. Like that's how much they killed my visibility. So, anyways, I think it all happened for a reason. I think like God was wanting me to do more of my storytelling TED talk. So that's what I'm gonna do. Is do another talk on storytelling. And so that one hopefully will break the internet. Man, you hit the nail on the head, bro, in terms of like why did mines take off and others didn't. One of the main reasons is because of the vulnerability. You know, typically TED is not a space where people get really vulnerable. So I think it stuck out with amongst those talks of like to hear something really raw and from the heart. Also the timing was very important. Like, and that was just divine timing. Like you think about it, like when it came out, that was obviously that was pre-pandemic. And you know, like how much mental health wasn't being talked about as compared to how much it is now. And so I think a big part of it was like, man, here's a former top 100 athlete talking about a mental health struggle on one of the world's biggest stages. Like that's a big deal. Similar to Simone Biles and her announcement about mental health, or Michael Phelps. Like it resonated with a lot of people who were having their own challenges and just weren't giving themselves the permission to vocalize it. So that was a huge thing that I think contributed to the success of the talk. The other two things that I mentioned is like number one, the marketing, and this is applies to everything, bro. You know this. Like it doesn't matter who you are, if it doesn't matter who you are, how gifted you are, if nobody knows who you are, like it just doesn't matter. And so, you know, there was a level of marketing that I did. Now, the whole story is I didn't share it for a couple of weeks when it first came out because I was embarrassed by it. But once I got an email from somebody, I think she was from Poland, that said it helped her repair her relationship with her estranged son, that gave me like the motivation to get out of my way, to focus on my impact instead of my image, and to get this message out there more. So that's when I started actively promoting it. And man, podcasts were a huge part of that. I did a lot of podcasts to promote the show. That made a huge difference. And I just got out there to say, like, you know, best-selling author isn't the best written book. And I would say the viral TEDx speeches aren't always the best speeches. They're the ones that are marketed the best. And so like there was a lot of marketing that went into that. Like, hey, check this out, getting on podcasts, getting on live streams. Obviously, I started to get requests to speak. And so that started to happen. Man, people were watching it in their school system, showing it on their lunch periods. So that was good because you got a group of students or a whole school watching the talk. And then of course, now that's like some built-in fans that go watch it again. Like there's a lot of strategic things that I did to be able to make that happen. And then the last thing I would say was not intentional at all, but I think it worked for the visibility. I don't have any way to really prove this, but I I had a wardrobe malfunction. And I think that like so many times on the podcast, I found myself saying like, man, you know, especially early because I was still embarrassed by it. So I was like, well, just so you know, like had a wardrobe malfunction. My shirt was 3.5 sizes too big. It looks like a parachute is coming out the back when you see the side angle. Like, sorry, you know, don't judge me. I look better than that type of thing. And I think people just wanted to go see the parachute so bad that they went and watched the talk. And they're like, oh, it's actually a decent talk. I think it got people to go watch it. So that's a big piece. And I would say that about like any type of marketing, like the more authentic, the more vulnerable, the more interesting that you can be in your marketing initiatives versus like, hey, here's my TEDx talk and the title, go watch it. Like the more that it helps people to actually, you know, seek out that talk and go watch it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's you got to stand out. And even though the wardrobe malfunction, that's a great way to stand out. So
Yeah.
2 million views later, let me ask you, Darryl, what was the hardest part? Or maybe what was something that was unexpected that came along with 2 million views? Maybe it was something along the lines of how it affected, if I know if it was me, I'd be thinking I was the bomb. Like I'm untouched. Like I am the man. I got 2 million views on. Or was there any part of it, because we think 2 million views is great, but was there anything that maybe wasn't that great about getting that many views?
Oh, those are two different questions. One is like what was great and what was not great. Uh, First of all, let me emphasize on the what was great part. Like it still baffles my mind to this day. Especially the further I get away from it, because at the time that was my like one of my that was like the best I could do. Like I was giving it all I had, you know. And now I look at it, I'm like, man, oh man, I could do so much better now. Like I hate that people watch it because they think that that's the skill that I have as a speaker. And I'm like, man, you gotta listen to me now. I got so much more sauce, so much more game, so much more, you know, quotes and takeaways and TTBs, transformational truth bombs. Um, but what was so shocking about that, man, was that, and this is true for everybody listening to this podcast, is that we say this all the time and it doesn't really stick for people. And it's that you'll never know who your story can impact. Like, never underestimate the power of your story. And it still baffles me to this day that there's people around the world who, man, if I walked past them in the street, I would never necessarily think that we have something in common or that we have like a real deep bond. But through the distribution of this talk, I started to see, man, it's people all over the world who can relate to this kid's story from the small town of Jackson, Michigan. Like, I had somebody come, I did a graduation in Florida. It was a 2-school graduation. I was the commencement speaker or the graduation speaker or whatever. And there was a couple from Russia who came to see their like nephew or whatever graduate, primarily because they wanted to hear me speak, because in their culture, mental health is very taboo. And they've been following me ever since they watched my talk. Like, they traveled across the country to hear me give a 15-minute graduation speech just to tell me thank you for how the talk impacted their life. And if you watch the talk, like, yeah, it's good stuff, right? But like some people have way more traumatic stories. Some people have way more skill than what I displayed on that stage 3.5, 4 years ago. And so, man, it's just like, man, you just never know who your story can impact. And that's why it's so important for people to get their messages out there. So that's the great thing that still continues to shock me, man. Maybe something negative that came up, and I kind of touched on it, but I'll just say it again. Of like, it touched on my insecurity, bro. Like, it did, because people were calling me something that I didn't see in myself. They were calling me, like you said, I'd be like, I'm the man, right? And that's not how, I mean, I need to learn that from you, right? I probably should have been more confident. It should have boosted my confidence in that way. Like, yo, dude, because I remember going to it and seeing all the speakers in the lineup. They were already 6-figure plus speakers. They were already making 10K plus per stage. And I was getting like 2,500 and 3,500 back then. You know, I had a couple of like $5,000 gigs, but I remember being like, man, I'm not ready for this. This is the big leagues. And then now I outperformed all of them. And so it shattered that belief that I had. And I still was holding on to that insecurity of like, man, I'm not the best, man. I'm not one of the best. I'm not really that great. And so the more that people were like, man, it's amazing, you got to check it out, the more it kind of was like breeding that insecurity. And it felt like the more people talked about it, the more it made me want to hide.
Darryl, where do you think that comes from?
You already know, childhood trauma. Oh, it's good that I can laugh about it, because I've been able to detach myself from, perception of self. But man, trauma, man, growing up, like, um, I say it in a TEDx talk, but being called the black kid that quote unquote talks and acts white. And so there's part of me that grew up with this insecurity that I wasn't enough to be liked or loved by other people. My authentic self wasn't enough to be liked or loved by other people. And that people only loved me because I was a good athlete. They didn't actually love me for me. Like, it comes from those childhood wounds, of knowing that like there were certain girls. Like, I remember in a grade school, they used to grade all the boys and how good they look. If you was fine, you got an A. And this was back then when the light skinned boys was so popular too, bro. And I was dark. Like, this was like Pretty Ricky and Genuine. Like, they was hot back then. And so if you look good, they gave you an A plus. If you was ugly, they gave you a D. And I remember there was girls who gave me E's and F's. Bro, we're talking about elementary and middle school, and I'm getting D's and E's and F's, right? And so, man, they just created this insecurity in me that like, man. And then I started getting good at sports, and now people that gave me D's, E's, and F's was giving me A's and B's, and then nothing changed about my looks. I didn't look no better. I just was performing better. So I had all that security that, man, people only like me for like my skill and my gift. They don't actually like me for my personality and my heart and who I really am on the inside. And so when that talk started to go viral and everybody's talking about it and praising it, I'm like, man, they don't like Darryl. They like who they think Darryl is, or this public persona of Darryl. And it just kind of bred that insecurity. And that was kind of shocking that it kind of had that effect on me.
So, Darryl, within the speaking world, you do some really incredible things. And you said something there that people that gave you E's and F's, once you became an athlete, started crushing it, now A's and B's. So what I
Yeah.
think of when I hear that is when you had an elevation in status, people started to treat you differently. So I guess
Yeah.
what's your advice to people that they might have a certain status and now people are treating them a different way, whether it's
Mm.
family, whether it's friends? How do you avoid changing as a person even when you have increased status in this world?
Yeah. Accountability is one of the biggest things. You can't do it alone. You just can't. Like, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. Everybody has blind spots. We all have temptations and weaknesses, and it takes to have good people in your life who will tell you, like, hey man, you're getting off center. Like, you're
Mm,
losing integrity. Man, you're letting this get to your head in the wrong way. That takes outside perspective a lot of times to shake people alive. I've had a lot of that in my life, man. I've had a lot of people that just called me and helped me to reel things in and help me to stay balanced and stay committed to the values, the character, the integrity that I say that I have and I say that I want to portray in this world. So that would kind of be like a big piece of it, is like you got to have accountability. The other thing that you got to have is you got to have, and this is a high achievers habit in general, is this the power of reflection, right? Like, you add reflection to anything is going to make you better, right? You cook, you review your process, you get better at cooking. You do a podcast, you go re-listen to it, you get better at speaking. You do a speech, you go listen to it, you get better at speaking. You have to become an observer of yourself, because I tell you what, it's you see a lot more when you're watching film than when you're playing the game.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I learned that from sports, right? Oh, I crushed it. I did amazing. Oh man, I had 12 tackles and 2 sacks. Oh, awesome. Can't nobody say nothing to me. Oh, you watch film, man, dude. You also gave away 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
you saw things that you didn't see initially. Now, I got a question on that,
Yes.
Darryl. As
Yep. Come
important
on.
as important as reflection is, Les Brown once told me. He said, "Devin, you can speak in the mirror as much as you want, but unless
Mhm.
you have a pair of trained eyes and trained ears listening to you and watching you, it don't make a difference because you won't be able to catch your own mistakes." So, in the work that you're doing, Darryl, you're helping people learn how to share their story, share their message. What do you say? And I'm speaking from experience.
Yep.
Maybe you're a better marketer than I am. I don't know what your experience has been. What I've noticed is sometimes entrepreneurs have this false belief that
Come on.
they're already the best speaker in the world.
Oh my God. Thank you. Did you read my post today? I literally
I did
said
not.
that.
Did you
I
put
said
that?
that. Yes.
Bro. And
Yes.
then I'll go listen to something and I'm like, oh God. Have you
Yeah.
not been listening to yourself? But when I reflect on my journey, at least, I was like, I was the same exact way. So number one, where does that come from? The false belief that we're better communicators than we really are. Most of course, there's going to be the 1% that's like naturally talented and gifted and awesome. They still need training too. But for the 99% of us, for myself, I needed to work my butt off in order to develop my communication skills. But why do you think there's such a resistance to seeing that you need to develop those skills because you really don't have them like you think you do?
Let's go. Well, the resistance is because, okay, so man, this is what my second book is going to be about, right? Like, the resistance, I tell people this all the time, that public speaking is like psychologically undressing in front of other people. So think about physically being undressed in front of somebody. They see all your imperfections. It's like they see that mole you got on your left butt cheek. They see the fact that your body parts is more crooked than what they look in the jeans. Like, they see everything, and it's vulnerable. It's scary because, like, now I know that I can't hide behind my clothing. Now I know that if you don't like me, it's because you see my true physical physique, and I gotta deal with that rejection. I can't say it's because of what I wore. I can't say it's because of how I talk, because all you did was look at the physical physique. Same is true with speaking. when I get that real clear mirror and that honest feedback about where I'm at and where my skill and abilities really are, man, you're talking about my belief system. You're talking about my confidence. You're talking about the things, how I perceive myself. Like you are shattering that reality. And it's not because of all these external things. It's because of me. Like I'm psychologically undressed in front of you and you don't like it.
I never thought about it like that, to be honest with you.
I have.
That's deep. That's deep. That
It's
takes it a level deeper than what it looks like on the surface.
Yeah, man, it's one of the worst types of betrayal. I think the worst type of hurt is spiritual hurt. And to me, that the second one is like when somebody rejects your voice, like they're rejecting you. Like your speaking is like your expression. It is the thing you believe in most in this world. And if somebody doesn't like that or that doesn't resonate with some people, it causes people to question like, what's wrong with me? And do I fit? And do I matter? And especially if I'm a high level person, I get this feedback because how much else don't I know that people don't like that nobody has said to me? Right. And number one, so I think it primarily happens though because people are unwilling to speak the truth in love. Like I do post about this stuff all the time. Like I literally say that the courtesy clap is what I call it. Right. Like you do a presentation, it wasn't amazing, but nobody wants to tell you that. And so they say, oh, courtesy. Oh, thank you. Great job. And some people will lie to you and say that changed my life. Knowing that it didn't change their life, they just think that that's what they're supposed to say to the speaker. Okay. And I think that happens for two reasons. Number one, I just think people don't know how to speak the truth in love. Number two, I feel like people are assessing others based upon their level of skill, not upon the skill that's required to move an audience. Right. So like Les Brown is different because it's like he has the eyes to see, whereas like the average Joe, like majority of the people fear death more than speaking. And I get
Yeah.
that statistics flood. But the point is like people don't want to speak. People don't like to speak. People are afraid to speak. And when they talk, they're trash. They read off a piece of paper. And so of course, if this high level person puts two paragraphs of thought together, they're gonna be like, okay, they're amazing. And this person's gonna think, well, I'm better than most. And it's
So
like,
so
yeah,
Darryl,
yeah,
it sounds no, I just
come on, bro.
I very rarely ever interrupt in a sentence, but
Come on, bro.
I love what you said about how I'm interpreting that is sometimes the level of feedback that we get and when we think we're better than we really are comes from people who might be less skilled than us.
Yes.
But when we start to hang around people that are at a higher skill than us,
Yes.
it will hurt our ego because it will reveal a deficiency within us.
Yes.
Or a lack of skill. So
yes.
Darryl, so let's transition then because you're really teaching people how to leverage their voice, communicate their message. What's for a business owner that's listening to this, an entrepreneur that's listening to this, if you had to give me maybe the top two reasons why somebody would work with you or somebody to help them master their message, what would that be? What real practical business application would that have for them?
Man, I feel like your purpose is the thing that's going to make you the most profitable in this world. It's just like a core belief that I have. I believe the most profitable thing a person can do is to be in alignment with their purpose. And so I only coach speakers who their purpose is to make an impact through speaking, not somebody who just wants to speak because it's cool. And my proof for that is I don't work with more than 15 people at one time because I'm in the depth of the work and their calling. I'm not mass producing people into this industry. And nothing against people who do that. In fact, I refer people often to people who do that because I get that the industry needs to be fed and there's tons of opportunity, especially in America. We have the largest industry for speaking. And so a person who works with me resonates with my mission statement. I help leaders to awaken to the seeds of their divine calling through the vulnerable sharing of their most intimate stories and the powerful advancement of their God-given message. That, if any part of that resonates, then I'm your guy. And I believe that there's a direct correlation between that and profit.
Okay. Going back to what we were saying, See, the thing I've realized is sometimes people are so afraid of speaking. They might know that it's something that they should do. They know it's that divine purpose, but for one reason or the other, they don't do it because of how others will perceive them, etc. Why do
Mhm.
you feel so many people battle with that fear of public speaking in the first place?
Because the power of life and death is in the tongue. Because call it the devil, call it society, call it secret societies, Illuminati, call it whatever you want. I Our voice and our words have tremendous power. And I think that kind of like Marianne Williamson says that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure. I think that people can literally feel like, have you ever plugged something powerful into an outlet and got a little afraid that you might get shocked?
Mm-hmm.
I think deep inherently in our being is this understanding, this knowledge of how powerful our words are, that people can feel the weight of that. And I think that weight causes so much anxiety and fear because people don't want to say the wrong thing, or simply because people don't know how to wield that power. That's why.
I guess, Darryl, what steps do we take then to really step into our voice? Because I know for
Yep.
me, it's tough, man. It was tough first getting started. You know what I did? They called me
What'd you do?
Devin. They called me Devin Brown. They called me Devin Thomas. They called me Devin Jakes. I tried to be like everybody else. I saw, if I saw Darryl Stinson, I'm gonna start talking like Darryl Stinson, and I was just copying this person, that person, and honestly, man, I didn't feel right. Like
Yep.
I felt off. So how does somebody really discover their, and it sounds cliche, their authentic voice, but when you experience it, you know that that's not just a cliche term. It's
Yeah.
powerful when you discover it. How does
Yeah.
somebody go about discovering that unique, authentic voice within them?
Yeah. Number one, hire a coach. Hire you, hire Les, hire me. Because we'll be able to help you to find that, right? People who coach in that way, people who have an authentic voice can often identify it in others.
Mm.
So that's number one, like hire somebody seriously. There's several things that I did. Number one, what you said, I did the same exact thing, bro. Same exact thing. Same exact thing. If you listen to me on enough podcasts, you're gonna hear me tell the stories of me teaching and opening up my sermons like Bishop Jakes and having somebody else read it. And then my pastor was somebody who was a great communicator, and like all of this stuff, bro. Like all of this stuff. Like, because I was trying to be powerful like them,
Yeah.
and I didn't know how to be it myself. But I will say this, man, you did it and you became a powerful speaker. I did it, I became a powerful speaker. So it might be like training wheels to like kind of like mimic somebody else, because one of the things that it did for me was it gave me permission to be more expressive. Right. So
Yes.
when
Yes.
I was trying to be
Yes.
like Darryl, it was like, I don't know if I'm good enough. And I was like in that. But when I was like, all right, I'm about to do my Eric Thomas thing. You want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you better get your butt up. You better like, now I'm yelling, I'm expressing, Bishop Jakes, like holes in the bottom of his shoes, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready. Like it gave me like permission to open up and be more expressive, which then stretched the mind. A mind once stretched never returns back to its original form. And so now it's like, oh, I know I can go there. I know I can go there. And by myself, like I don't know, I just didn't have the confidence. But when I thought I was being mini Bishop Jakes or mini Eric Thomas, then it gave me enough to push past that barrier. Okay. So I don't think that you have to mimic somebody in order to do that, but sometimes that helps. Like I know people in the speaking industry at a high level, even like what's his name? The Tony Robbins. He has an alter ego. Like Tony Robbins is an ego he created. It's a persona he created. He built that before he became it. Right. So there was a level of like, hey, I'm going to create this persona of who I am. Right. Like one of my clients, she puts on glasses when she speaks because it makes her feel like, okay, now like I'm superwoman. Like that little bit of like mind game to get past that fear response, that trigger is helpful for some people. So you might have to borrow somebody else's style before you can find your own. Like you might have to. Okay. The other thing that I did, man, is clarity is a process of expression. Clarity is a process of expression. So a lot of times it's like, how do I find my authentic voice? Oh, what does it sound like? And we're thinking about it instead of speaking it until we find it.
It's
Okay.
not, it's, so it's not just something we could just journal about, Darryl?
No, it's not. It's just something you can just learn about. You have to speak your way to clarity. Clarity is a process of expression. The more that I express, the more I get clear. The other thing I would say is look at the places where you are exuding your authentic voice and start to, observe that and bring that into the areas where you're not being as authentic. So most people in their relationships, like their close ones with their significant other or their best friend or best girlfriend, like they're super authentic in that voice and that expression. So I tell my clients all the time, I say, hey, man, have you ever yelled at somebody? Have you ever got in an argument? Okay. Yeah. I got an argument for it. Yeah, you were really passionate, right? Yeah. Do that. Do that. Right. Because that really helps. That really helps. When you identify where you are being authentic, it helps you in the places where you struggle to be authentic.
I like that, man. That's really good.
Yeah.
Now, Darryl, how old are you?
I'm 33.
So how are the challenges that Darryl faces at 33 different than the challenges Darryl faced at 23?
Uh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I've never been asked that before. That's a good question. Um, it's interesting. I think they're more mature problems. I'm responsible for much more today than I was at the age of 23. I have far more influence. There feels like there's far more at stake. I mean, obviously I have 4 kids, and a huge following, and affecting millions of people through the leaders that I pour into. So I think there's a weightiness that I feel in 33 that I didn't feel at 23.
Darryl, when you say influence, you said the problems are more mature or the challenges are more mature. And then one of the words you
Yeah,
used was influence. Why do you
yeah.
think that maturity equates to influence? Or why do you feel like influence is heavy in terms of responsibility?
To Spider-Man, right? To whom much is given, much is required. Like it's just true. It's just true, man. I remember hearing Bishop Jakes talk about it early on, and I've been in his mentorship program with Project Gideon and stuff. And he said, man, if I really wanted to do something bad to you, if I really wanted to harm you, he said, I will give you the keys to my church. And he was speaking to a lot of pastors who, they want to make a church. They want to grow a church like him. He's like, if I wanted to do you a disharm, I'd give you what you're praying for. To give someone something that they're not ready for is not a blessing, it's a curse. If I hand my daughter, who's 9 years old, the keys to a Ferrari, although a Ferrari is a nice gift, it's not because she's not mature for it yet. The same is true with influence, responsibility. We want things often far before we're internally mature enough to handle that which we seek. That's why the process of goal setting is so powerful, because when you set goals, part of how you manifest them is you become the person who
Yeah.
can steward that level of influence and growth or whatever. And
Mhm.
so there's a becoming that has to happen before the manifestation is present in your life. This is why people win the lottery and they lose all the money, because they never actually became the person who could steward the wealth.
Darryl, what do you feel? Okay, I need some coaching here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Coach me for a second. So, what I realized over the past couple of years, whenever I set a goal, I would get super excited. And then eventually my desire would kind of wane. And it just like wasn't really inspired to take the actions, and it just felt like that desire that I had was gone. I was like, where did it go? Like I had it and it's gone. Now I feel like crippled. I don't want to do this. I'm procrastinating this, that, and the other thing. And I know that happens with a lot of, I know I'm definitely not the only one. How does one maintain that high level of desire? Because, and I say this because I listen to some people and like, I've always been this way since I was young. I've always been super motivated. And then I reflect on my life. I'm like, man, in college, like I crushed it, but now I'm struggling. Is something wrong with me here? Like, so
Yeah.
how do you maintain that high level of desire so that you can go out and pursue and continue to pursue those goals at a high level?
Yeah. I would observe the times where you felt like it. Because my guess, when you felt that high level of desire and motivation, because my guess is that there is multiple things that influenced you feeling that way beyond a goal that you were chasing. Okay, there was a consistency in maybe a workout regimen. There was maybe a consistent voice speaking into your life. Maybe there was a video that you were watching in that season. Maybe there was a type of music you were listening to. Like there was multiple things affecting that state of being in consciousness for you, other than the goal you set. So I would look into those things, because oftentimes when we're chasing new goals, we might be missing some of those influential pieces that help us to stay in that high frequency. And so therefore that's what's causing the lull in our life, not necessarily the lack of desire for a goal. So I would really, really look at that. Um, the other thing I would say is just, man, to like constantly find ways to connect to your why, and really allow the impact to soak in. Okay.
Mm.
One of the things that can happen when you're a person like yourself and you've, impacted thousands of people, millions of people, is that like it can kind of start to feel like just another number.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like just another view. But I remember there was a day when I got like 100 views on a video, and I thought I was about to blow up.
No, you might be Justin Bieber.
You know what I'm saying? Everything else was getting like one like, and I got 100 views. I'm like, I got 100 views on that video. I'm famous now. Everybody watching my stuff, bro. And you start to get millions of views and top downloaded podcasts and stuff like that. And it starts to like, people just start to feel like they're just another number. But man, I tell you what, man, the things that always, because I fall into the same thing, bro, like all the time. It happens. Like complacency is a big thing, because I came from nothing. And like I was like, if I never make another dime in my life, like I already won. Like I already won. Nobody else made it. Like very few people made it out of where I'm from. Definitely not any of my friends, and so like, there's a level of complacency I can fall into. And what brings me out of that is connecting to my why, but also like really allowing the impact that I'm making to soak in, right? Like I had a kid come to me that at a college gig that I did, he was a senior, and he said, "Hey man, like I heard you speak when I was a freshman in high school. My parents had just got divorced and I was getting ready to drop out of school." And he said, "But you had came in and spoke to our school, and something about what you said motivated me to stay in school. And to, now I'm a senior in college and I don't even come to these events that they host, but I saw you were speaking. I just wanted to come and say thank you for changing my life."
Mm. Darryl, some of that's funny about that. So I kind of did what you said, like reconnect with who I was during that time. And one of the things that I did is I texted one of my old college roommates, and I was like, "Hey, bro, what do you think like really made me tick during college?" And it's funny because of what you just said. Let it soak in, like let it soak in, like that you're having that impact. So he texted me something. He said, "Man, you always just seem to want to outperform your goals." And then this is what he brought up. I don't even remember this. He was like, we went to the gym one day and you were like, "We're just going to go on the treadmill for 5 minutes." But then 5 minutes passed and you were like, "No, I need to go another 5 minutes." I was like, "You remember that? I don't even remember that." So yeah, it's incredible the impact that we have. Sometimes we don't realize it in the moment, but only when we look back do we oftentimes realize the impact that we really do. And and I'm sure you have multiple stories like that. Like, that happened? You remember that? To us, it's insignificant, but to somebody else, it could really shape the way that they view the world.
Yeah.
Darryl, at this point, I really want to kind of wind things down. This is more of a philosophical question for you, but I guess as you think about your life, what really brings you meaning, and where do you attach meaning to in your life? Because one of the things that I heard you say was like, let it soak in, reconnect with who you were. And one of the things for me is like, if I just try to chase a goal, a number, it's like, that's it. And I've really realized within myself that I value the pursuit of something. Right? That's why before we started the show, I mentioned to you something. It's like, it's one of the things I'm most excited about since college, because it's like, okay, now I'm ready to just run, hunt, eat, right? I just want to get back into the pursuit. So what is it that brings you that feeling of fulfillment and makes you feel most powerful?
Yeah. Seeing the ripple effect of my work through other people, Like I was looking at like one of my clients leads like a community of men, and like he historically has struggled with like being vulnerable because macho man type of stuff, and like seeing me working with him and then starting to see like now his clients are like, because all his clients, I remember the first time I met him, they were all like, I'm like, I couldn't even have a real conversation with them. Like they weren't even. It was
They're
just
about to
like,
eat you.
no, they were just like, there was no like friendly conversation. It was all like, what do you do? How much you make? And da da da. Like it was all
Right, right.
stiff, and
It
it
was
was like,
super alpha.
yeah, super alpha, bro. And then now I'm starting to see them like, how's your family? And I'm like, man, I know that's a ripple effect of my work, and that
Mm.
brings me great joy and passion to see that. Um, Obviously see the direct result, both from a speaking standpoint and a coaching other speakers. One of the things that makes me different in the way that I coach is, I say this statement that speaking doesn't just impact the audience, it also impacts the speaker. And I believe that when you communicate vulnerably from a place that's real, like everyone teaches what they know, very few people teach what they do. And it's hard to even find somebody who teaches who they are. And when you start teaching who you are, how you think, what you believe, and that level of vulnerability, it grows you faster than most things in the personal development space will. And so to see like one of my clients is, she's 45 and she had cut her father out for her entire life. But because of the process of opening up and sharing her story, she let him back into her life. And it's like, man, that brings me life and joy. And then of course my children. Like I just spoke on stage with my daughter for the first time, literally this Monday. And man, I'm getting emotional, dude. My daughter's 9 years old. And it was 9 years old where people were calling me the black kid that talked and acted white. And I was shutting all that stuff down. I was closing my heart. I was shutting off my light from the world. And now, because of the work that I do, my daughter is opening and expressing and being confident in herself. Like you talk about breaking generational curses. You talked about like establishing something new for the people coming after you. Like, man, that for me is everything. And so those are the things that I'm doing to really stay connected to my purpose, and the things that really drive me right now is the ripple effect of my work.
Yeah, Les once told me, he said, Devin, it's not what you leave for your children, it's what you leave in your children. I was like,
100%.
that was deep, man.
That was good.
Darryl, what an incredible conversation. And before we head out of here, people need to know where they can find you, man. And most importantly, what to do if they're interested in working with you. Because if you're listening to my voice, Darryl is somebody I highly recommend you work with. I mean, Darryl, you are incredible in the work that you do, and the proof's in the pudding too. So Darryl, if people want to work with you, people just want to follow you, where can they reach out to you? How can they get in contact?
Man, hit me up on any social at Stinson Speaks, or, DarrylStinson.com is my website, man. Just reach out and let's just explore, have a conversation.
Darryl, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for your time. This has been incredible. And God only knows what's next for you, but I know it's up from here, my brother. Thanks for being on.
Appreciate you, man.